Why does my back hurt if I have a sedentary job? Well, there is a number of components that it could be, and we've got to try and work out which ones are influencing that bad back more than others. So we've got things that are related to the work, and we've got things that are related to the people doing the work. So work is sedentary. Sedentary work is essentially being in the seated position and you're being very static. This puts a lot of pressure on the lower back. In a sense, it makes the hips slightly more immobile and less flexible. And that is sort of the most fundamental and basic ingredients for a bad back. Obviously, as I've mentioned, the work is in the seated position, which again isn't the most effective position for the hips and the lower back. The hips want to be mobile, and the lower back doesn't want to be sat in a seat. The lower back wants to be up on feet moving around because it reduces the pressure. As soon as you sit down, it increases the pressure on the lower back and the hips become immobile, as I've mentioned. What we then have is people sit stationary. Now, this is something that I talk about a lot with people with regard to their sitting posture and position. When people go to their desk and they are told by it could be HR, but people that have done ergonomics, they are told that they need to be sat up straight with their arms in a certain position, their hands in a certain position, so on and so forth, because that's the position that reduces the pressure on certain areas of the joint. But being stationary is just as bad. So if you're sat static in that position, then that's just as bad. What we need to be doing is understanding that posture of the shoulder and that posture of the forearm and that posture of the lower back, but then being able to move and change that posture, because the hips want to be mobile, the shoulders want to be mobile. If the hips are stationary, that's adding pressure to the lower back. If the shoulders are stationary, that's adding pressure to the upper back and the neck. So what we want to be able to do is change position and posture throughout the day. Change the position of the hips, change the position of the feet, change the position of the shoulder, lean to the front, the back, the left side, the right side, lean forward, lean back, whatever it might be, to be able to bring that little bit of movement into that stationary position. Then we have people use poor posture. So poor posture, along with sitting stationary, it's a recipe for disaster with regards to the lower back, the upper back and the neck. So we want to be thinking, how can we use a better posture? And relating it to this one is how can we then move and mold that posture so it just releases a little bit of pressure on my back. Then we have people use their body incorrectly. So in between all the sitting, they go home, they're carrying shopping bags, they're lifting, they're carrying, they're pushing doors open, they're pulling doors open, they're getting in and out of their car. And generally what's happening is they're using their body incorrectly. They're not putting their spine in the right position, their shoulders in the right position, their knees in the right position. They aren't lifting with their hips. They aren't moving and rotating from their hips and things like that, because that's not necessarily something that they're told. So what's happening here is, okay, they're sat down, they're not moving, but when they do then go and move, they're not using their body correctly. So again, all of this is adding up and increasing wear and tear on joints, increasing pressure on joints, and leaving that joint and that area of the body more vulnerable to injury. So when we start talking about these, what we then need to do is start educating on lifting technique. Now again, we're told to lift with our knees. That's not exactly true. You're more effective to lift with the hips. So it's more effective to learn how to move correctly. Then we've got to build core strength and build your body in a way that it can cope with the rigors of everyday life, being sat down for a long time. So are we making our hips flexible? Because if we sit down a lot, we're going to be making our hips less flexible. They're not going to be moving. Can we introduce some movement into it? Are we building core strength and stability? Are we making hips more flexible, as I've mentioned? Are we keeping the spine with a little bit of movement? We're not just sat stationary in one position. And then finally, people don't feel like they can move. I've heard stories of companies literally chaining people to desks because they wear a headphone, and when they take their headphone off, they're, in a sense, they're not, it's related to performance pay. When they've got their headphone on and taking calls, that's related to their performance and to their pay. As soon as they take that off and go to the toilet, it starts affecting that. So the company wants to know why you not got your headphones on at this time for this amount of times during the day, which is absolutely crazy, I know, but it's something that is happening out there. So people don't feel like they can move. People don't feel like they can get up out of their seat, do a quick lap of the office, do a quick hip stretch, and then sit back down in their seat and crack on with their work. So it's very much doing this, and it's not about, you know, doing high intense exercise. It's just having a program in place where you can do 15, 20, 25 minutes of exercise 5 to 7 days a week, so you're able to have a healthier body, have healthier joints, reduce the wear and tear on those joints, reduce the pressure on those joints, and then therefore reduce the risk of injury to those joints. So why does my back hurt if I have a sedentary job? Generally, it's because of the stationary and the seated nature of it, but also what you're doing outside of that. If you're not giving your body the tools that it needs with regards to the core strength, stability and flexibility, then it's only going to be open to greater risk of injury. So these are some of the things that we've got to think about. So which ones of these resonate with you? Which ones of these do you think affect you the most? And then what can you start doing to overcome them? So hopefully this has been helpful. My name is Chris from Christopher Holt Training. I'll speak to you in the next video.